Добрый день.
Good day, dear colleagues. We start our work. We have a number of speakers who will join us. They are coming from the other discussion platforms. I'm sure that today we shall have a very interesting discussion. I want to thank all participants for your agreement to participate. For us, it's very important to have this panel discussion. In the plenary session, we said that this year for Eurasian Economic Union is special. We celebrate 25 years of the idea for Eurasian economic integration. We recall the year 1994, the speech of the first president of Kazakhstan, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev in the Moscow State University, when proposed to create the Eurasian Union. In those days, the idea was a breakthrough idea, innovative and very ambitious. Few people believe that in the state that just gains sovereignty can create the full-fledged union. But step by step, the idea translated into reality, and we went face by face. We created bilateral agreements, and in the 2000s, the Eurasian Economic Community. And then we believed that sooner or later, the Eurasian Economic Community will be replaced by the Eurasian Economic Union in 5 years. On the 29th of May 2004, here in the capital of Kazakhstan, agreement was signed on creation of the Eurasian Economic Union. This year, we already celebrate the 5 years since signing the agreement, and already we have the first results of function of the Eurasian Economic Union. It's that we need to state that creation of the Eurasian Economic Union coincided with a very difficult situation in global economy, in global finances, geopolitics, politics, and our assessments show that thanks to the creation of the Eurasian Economic Union, our states minimized part of the consequences, negative consequences of the global impacts of the global crisis. And now we got together to discuss the voyage which we have made within 25 years from moving to the idea to reality, to creation of the union, to talk and discuss to what level the expectations of the participants and simple citizens and economic operators were met from the economic integration process, what needs to be done, what issues are in the agenda of our cooperation. It's very important because now, according to the declaration of our heads of our states, which was signed in December last year, we are working over the strategic document, which will define the strategic areas for further development and integration. And that is why our today's discussion is so important for us to understand in which direction we must work over this very important document. And now I want to give the floor to the first Deputy of Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Minister of Finance of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Alikhan Ashanovich Ismailov. You are given the floor. Thank you, Tatiana Dmitrievna. First of all, let me welcome you, participants of the session in Nur-Sultan City on the platform of our Astana Economic Forum. Under the framework of the forum, we created the communicative platform with the traditional leading politicians, economists, representatives of business, scientific community, mass media get together. I express gratitude to the Eurasian Economic Commission for the active participation in the work of the forum. I am sure that the discussion will promote the further promotion of our integration union in modern world. Integration is one of the major economic trends. That is why the topic of the is very actual and important. This year, as Tatiana Dmitry has stated, we celebrate the Jubilee date as 25th year of the idea and the 5 years since signing the agreement about creation of the Eurasian Economic Union. And as it has been stated, the idea belongs to our leader of the nation, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev, who announced it in 1994. And after 20 years after that historical speech, in the university, in the capital of Kazakhstan, heads of Belarus, Russia, and Kazakhstan signed the agreement about the Eurasian Economic Union. And then Armenia and Kyrgyzstan joined it, and so we created the Eurasian Economic Union, but not much time has passed. But now we can say that the idea of the Vice President is implemented and continues to successfully develop. The integration union is a voluminous market without borders, with the external trade turnover more than 250 billion USD. Within 5 years of the functioning of it, huge work has been done in terms of practical implementation in the common market to ensure the principle of four freedoms for commodities, capital, workforce, formation of it simplifies transboundary connections. Business doesn't have to fill in a huge number of declarations to waste efforts. And since the moment of function of the union, the states improved the indicators in the world rating doing business of the World Bank. And as of today, union signed three agreements about cooperation with Iran, Vietnam, China. We opened a new page in the area of creation of the international mechanisms for cooperation. Thanks to this agreement, the turnover turned for reach 57. We have active negotiations with Serbia, Singapore, Israel, and India, and Egypt. The new code of the union was enforced, which is aimed to limit the customs barriers and which will make the life of customers easier. We eliminate barriers in the internal market. Of course, it's clear that all the barriers to free flow of commodities cannot be ensured in one day, but through coordination with the Eurasian Economic Commission, we do and pursue a lot of work. We define the vectors for further cooperation. It was done by heads. On the declaration on further development of integration processes was signed. Implementation of this document is an impulse for further progressive development of the union. In the union, the heads of the states agreed to create the common energy market. We shall form the common markets for gas, oil derivatives, which will not use export customs duties. We shall ensure equal access to transportation of oil derivatives and oil. We defined major directions for implementation of digitalization agenda. Starting from 29 of March is the agreement of labeling of goods with the system of Eurasian Union was introduced, which is aimed to ensure the health of people. And we have cooperation projects in metallurgy, light industry, space, information policies. Deepening of industrial cooperation will expand cooperation between enterprises of the states of the union, will involve more number of enterprises, will create new production chains, and we shall have a better strategy for the third markets, and we shall ensure equal rights in the pension provision in terms of governmental guarantees and about pensions. Kazakhstan initiated creation of the single integrated Eurasian electronic labor exchange, which will simplify procedures of employment for the members of employers. And the benefit from it is expansion of the market for products, establishment of equal access to the common infrastructure, free flow of commodities and services and capital. The catalyzer for further development forward can be external factors, global challenges, among them development and the use of new revolutionary technologies, change of the world economic architecture, deviation from and protectionism grows of it. And we need to create a model where all the states will benefit. We need to create powerful modern clusters, sectors which will be competitive with the goods of the third countries, and to have our own niche in the global market. Implementation of big infrastructure projects is very important, like organization of high-speed motor road from China via our states. We have to have bright projects like Airbus, which became the symbol of EU integration. Our union is a young organization, potential of it huge. It can become the pole of attraction. It's self-sustainable. We can act as partners for regional mega projects, and I am sure that the Eurasian integration can bring in the future a lot of benefits to the states of EU, to the Central and Southeast Asia. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Alekhan Aspanch, for your very informative speech, because the agenda which we are facing was characterized by you, and this is really what we need to work over. Viktor Borisovich Khristenko, he participated in on integration processes within the last decade. I do remember how in his office representatives of Russia discussed creation of the Eurasian Economic Community and then of the Customs Union. He was the first chairperson of the Collegium of Eurasian Economic Commission. Now he's the president of the Eurasian Business Commission, and we cooperate with them in regards to all our issues. Now, did we meet all our expectations from integration, and what needs to be done by us, dear respected Tatiana Dmitrievna, dear colleagues? Of course, it's difficult to cover the 25 years period within 25 minutes, not to speak about 15 minutes, and to identify the major, most important moments. But I'll try to focus on several moments, which I think are very important to understand the current situation and for understanding the prospects and tasks which can be faced by Eurasian Economic Union based on the agreement, and pretty soon we shall celebrate 5 years since it was endorsed. We do remember how 25 years ago, Nur-Sultan Abishevich delivered a lecture in Moscow University. I looked at the hall and I saw that many people remember it. Maybe many people maybe don't remember it because there are so many young people who were present today, but it means that the project went through the phase by phase in terms of time period, which no doubt started from the loss of what we had in the past. And after collapse of the Soviet Union, it was obvious that it will be impossible to restore the past in the future. And nobody was happy with the position in which we all turned out to be. And in that year, and in the beginning of the 90s, and in this situation, 1994, the time and place and content which was delivered by Nur-Sultan Abishevich in Moscow University, which was delivered by him, was on time, absolutely, and in place. It was supported by two countries, and from that moment, everything started. And of course, at that moment, from the ideas which we had, of course, the EU, which was the most advanced group in terms of integration, and that is why the idea of Eurasian Union, of Eurasian idea was based on the EU example. But of course, with looking at the past, we 5 years ago signed the agreement, and signing of it, information of it, was not that simple process. Sometimes it was on the nervous side. But I am grateful to all presidents for that they pushed on everybody to get a full-fledged agreement of more than 1,000 pages, the document of the direct impact, where we have the norms of direct impact, and we fixed the agenda up to 2025, and at that moment, for 10 years ahead, it's very important. But such things don't often happen, and from this point of view, the agreement turned out to be voluminous, deep, and wonderful, but nervous, quite nervous, and it was related to sovereignty. It was the first moment to which I want to draw your attention, because creation of certain supranational structures quite often is taken and as a loss of sovereignty in discussions. But from my point of view, in order to be politically correct, it's disputable. Whatever is created by Eurasian Union, the countries used the model of joint decision-taking with equal rights of voice, and all the countries make a decision, and they in EU, they cover a big area. The economic opportunities to protect themselves is stronger. But in this respect, we wanted to have a similar grouping. Of course, it obviously strengthens the sovereignty, and it doesn't put it under doubt such a grouping. It's a very important thesis that it's the basis of what needs to be done further. And further, like in the as we shall do more. And in this agreement, it's already stipulated what we should achieve in the future. As it has already mentioned, the Eurasian Union was founded and actively developed starting from the year 2009 up to the year 2015. It was a breakthrough in development, in movement. It's not all by chance. The last decade, the whole global agenda and whatever happened in the world was defined by two processes, the processes of globalization and regionalization. They went on in parallel, sometimes getting into some local conflicts, but collapse of the Soviet Union radically changed the whole picture, and the processes of globalization has become not only domineering, but in fact managed from one center. The processes of globalization from with the institutions, representatives of them are here present at our firm. From my point of view, within this period of time, have come to the critical situation in the year 2008, when we said that it was the beginning of the financial global crisis. I always said, even at this forum, when it started, that it's not a global financial crisis. It's a real crisis of the processes of globalization and institutions which support this process, which develop the models for the future, which try to manage this way or in other ways, manage the development of the world, which try to solve the tasks which they cannot otherwise solve, to reduce the gap between the rich and poor countries, to give the instrument to fish, but they are fishing, and the fish is becoming bigger. But those who are talking different things about these instruments, they still continue to listen to such consultancy. And in this respect, the world has come in its global processes in a deadlock, rigid deadlock, and we need a some revitalization. But how can we do it? From my point of view, that not from a single platform, not from a single person. The model of the future was described. What sort of a future we have? But the future has a wonderful picture. We today listened to the representatives of Sberbank Financial, biggest corporations, heads of them from Nokia. He told to us, for instance, if you bring to this panel Zuckerberg, Amazon, Elon Musk, and to listen to them, it will be quite obvious that many processes of corporate power, of creation of similar institutions, has overcome long ago the economic force and political force of many or majority of the states, and few people can compete with them. It's quite an obvious challenge, serious challenge, and so far we don't have any response to it. And this model of the future so far has not been provided, but how should it be developed? I think that the whole world and we, in this respect, we are not original ones. We are like pioneers, because Eurasian Economic Union is the second by the depth of integration group in the world, which has the richest experience and background and advantages. And that is why I think that the future of the world will be formed in the dialogue between such regional integration groups. And if these groups are effective between themselves, and if we have the effective dialogue between them, depending on it, we shall be able to develop the adequate picture of the future for the world, about how it will look and what can be done for it. And when I talk about regionalization, I think that it's not only a geographical thing. We should, by our union, that having the common borders is a necessary characteristics. And such a group, as BRICS is a classical example of regionalization, but on the basis of economic potential, of growing economic potential. The countries which are placed in different points of the world can act as a regional group and SCO, and they can bring in other examples also where the interests are in line with the platforms which develop their common understanding, and they think of how to promote these ideas to the platform of global dialogue. And I think that our union, based on the richness of the structures, which includes the countries, based on how different issues are being solved. I mean, SCO and BRICS, we have a unique situation, not only to prove our internal efficiency, but to establish an effective dialogue with the biggest countries. In fact, the listed groups by me cover a bigger half of the population of the world in terms of economy, in terms of the population number, which is a plus, and it's the future that we have in Eurasian Economic Union. And this future we today discussed in terms of the Eurasian project, and with the project of the Silk Belt, One Belt, One Way, promoted by the Chinese People's Republic. What can be the approximation between us, and what is the internal efficiency of the next phase for the Eurasian Economic Union? I think that in what has been written already in the agreement itself, my colleague has just mentioned that by 2025 we have to form a single market of infrastructure services. We are talking about the single market for services: oil, gas, electrical power, transport services. We have to establish information communicative space and to make it a common one. And it's written in the agreement, somewhere maybe deeply, somewhere not deeply, and we don't understand how it will develop further and what we shall have in the final end. But I think that this is a major thing which will define the infrastructure for the next 10 years. Infrastructure, financial, information, communication, transport, energy, four kinds of infrastructure which has a skeleton of any economy. If you remember, all wars and revolutions, they all happened to the domineer in terms of infrastructure. In the past, we had to be present there physically, but now in order to domineer in the financial sector, it's not required to be physically present somewhere. It's enough to have some rigid reserve currency, which enables to control all the processes like flow of any points to any points over the currency. I'm not talking about information communicative systems. That's why I recalled the biggest information corporations which have bigger power in this area. It means that they should also be involved in this platform for our dialogue. And that is why creation of the single universal infrastructures under the framework of Eurasian Economic Union, it seems to be the next challenge and the next task for it, because there is nothing more valuable than transaction costs in transaction services. But if we have the skeleton of the infrastructure and if it is effective, then we shall win from it. And I'm sure that the interaction with our global partners, when I talk about the Chinese People's Republic, about the format of SCO or BRICS, of course, they will follow the same infrastructure, and they can do it. And it's not by chance that China proposes idea of infrastructure as a basic key idea for it under the framework of the Single Belt, Single Way initiative and the project. And this is a very significant moment because it will give to us the multiple strengthening of the geo-economical force and power of the country. And in this respect, the added challenge of digital transformation, maybe these two aspects, infrastructure and digital transformation, would define the future of the Eurasian Economic Union, and not only of our union, but so as a partners, and to what extent we can do it effectively in the nearest future. Of course, it all depends on how fast we can get the understanding when the deadline will finish and what can happen further in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Viktor Vasilyevich, for very deep analysis, and that you recalled that it was very difficult to work over the agreement. And I recalled one very complicated element, which neither of the regional organizations faced, because in parallel we carried out two tracks. So we wrote and developed agreement of Eurasian Economic Union. On the other hand, in parallel, we hold the negotiations about accession of two participants, Armenia and Kyrgyzstan, which was a very difficult work. But anyway, I think we successfully finished it. In terms of legal issues, economic issues, last year we did two reports about the first results of participation of Armenia and Kyrgyzstan in our union, which showed quite positive results. But I want to say that initially we started in three: Belarus, Kazakhstan, Russia in the year 2006. A decision was taken by presidents of the Eurasian Economic Community that leaders, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia, will go ahead, and us participants will join when they are ready to the process, ready to join this process. I want to give the floor to the plenipotential ambassador of Belarus in Kazakhstan. I thank you, Tatiana Viktorovna, Viktor Borisovich, dear colleagues. It's very pleasant for me to be present here. I see so many faces which have already familiar, who prepared in development of the agreement of the union. And today, in this jubilee year, we can recall the phases through which we passed as a union And today we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Eurasian integration. The idea of formation of the Eurasian Union was proposed by the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev in 1994, 29th March, making his speech in the Moscow University after Lomonosov. And it, in the basis of it, a large-scale integration of the new states on a better pragmatic economic basis, which was needed for our countries. Initiatives which establish cooperation between them to create the integration structure. We managed to do it. We managed to implement it. The major goals of it to form the agreed upon economic policy, to adopt joint programs for development, which is our everyday work. The basis for development of the countries is economic beneficence through ensuring the free flow of commodities, capital, and workforce, creation of the single market for information communication services to meet the challenges of the day, and I support this. I support the focus which was done by Viktor Borisovich. As an example, I want to refer to the fact that our Kazakhstan-Belarusian relations, bilateral relations within the last we changed in terms of the architecture with consideration of our cooperation in the framework of the Union. Tatiana Vladimirovna at many forums highlighted that the crisis that we faced within these 5 years. So it could have a deeper consequence and aftermath if we turned out to be all together and all together didn't look for the way out and solutions out of this situation. And as a result, we passed through this phase, and we can now talk about new prospects. In spite of the positive dynamic of development of our countries of Eurasian Economic Union, we need to state that there are unimplemented potential, anti-crisis potential, which is in our union. The global economy also has a serious impact on the financial and economic situation in our country. At the same time, our agenda is very significant, actual, and it's very good to hear that the new strategy which is being developed, it prepares the answer to the challenges that arise, which will enable us to move forward assuredly in the next decade at least. Belarus is an active participant, and that is why I want to remind the words of the head of our country, Lukashenko, who in the year 2015 said that the Belarusian side at all phases of development of the agreement declared about the need of maximum liberalization in the framework of Eurasian Economic Union. This is a major thematical call, and we worked over it within the 5 years. And President said that the foundation for the union must be full consolidation of withdrawal and movement of goods. But at the same time, we listened to the major task to form the basis for integration. And the head of our country also talked about it, talking at different forums. And an example of it is the work which was carried by EC and EU, carrying out of negotiations and signing the agreements with the countries of ASEAN. We have an example, wonderful example, when we signed 2 years ago with Vietnam such an agreement, and today we see a very big task to carry out negotiations between the Eurasian Economic Union and the EU. And it's very important, the work which has been started not only with the Chinese People's Republic is very important, and with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and on the basis of the initiatives which were announced by Mr. Xi Jinping. These are the economic projects, the project of Silk Way, which involves and engages all our countries and many states of the region and even the world leaders, economic leaders. And that is why I want again to assure that Belarus was and will be the most active participant of the Eurasian movement, and all the new pages that we shall have to make, we shall do it together. It will be integration, deepening of our union, based on the tasks to form the single markets in the spacehood of the Eurasian spacehood. The task is to attract new possible members to our union and to create conditions for stabilization of the economic conditions of cooperation to ensure the appropriate conditions for our citizens who live in our country. Thank you very much to you for the work which is carried out by the Eurasian Economic Union. Thank you very much, Anatoly Ivanovich, for your analysis. I want to say that all speakers in these speeches highlighted the importance of integrating of our union in the global economy, about the challenges, about global problems for Eurasian Economic Union, and about opportunities to become the pole, a major pole in the new architecture which is being formed. When we analyze with whom we built up the system of partnership relations, these are the countries which present the Asian Pacific region. The first agreement, as it has been said, was signed with Vietnam, then with the Chinese People's Republic of non-preferential nature, with Iran about free trade, and now we have negotiations with Singapore, and we are starting negotiations with India. If we talk about MOUs, this is the countries of the Asian Pacific region: Singapore, Cambodia, Thailand, Mongolia. We do active work with the regional organizations. We can say that last year we signed two significant MOUs between the Eurasian Economic Commission and ASEAN, and between EC and Mercosur. In fact, three leading famous regional unions are connected with us by MOUs. And one of our significant partners is the Eurasian Social Commission of UN for Central Asia and Pacific countries. With this SCADA, we are signing the second MOU on cooperation. And with my greatest pleasure, I want to give the floor to Mrs. Armidi Salsia Al-Sharbana, Executive Secretary of UN.
Tatiana, for the introductory remarks. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to be part of this eminent discussions to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the idea of the Eurasian integration and the 5th anniversary of the Eurasian Economic Union Treaty. I'm very pleased to be here in Astana in Nur-Sultan, participating in this Astana Economic Forum. This is my first time actually to be here in Kazakhstan as well as the city of Nur-Sultan. And today, as I'm sure all of you are very much aware that all the countries in the world is very committed to implement and to realize the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Agenda 2030. And to realize this Agenda 2030, which is a very ambitious, very integrated, holistic, with the three pillars of economic, social, as well as environmental concern, more and more deeper regional economic cooperation and integration is becoming important to also support the realization of our commitment to realize Agenda 2030. So in this respect, certainly the commitment or the vision of Eurasian integration in which the economic integration certainly is a very important part, is directly relevant to the achievement of SDGs, and as well as actually to this vision of economic integration and cooperation within the broader framework of Asia Pacific. And our regional commission, Asia Pacific, is located in Bangkok. So covered not only the Asia part. Asia is very, in this case, is very diverse, from Central Asia, North Asia, Northeast, Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, Southeast Asia, and Pacific. So you can imagine the broad coverage, comprising of China, India, Indonesia, my country, Indonesia, Pakistan, Japan, Korea, and Pacific Islands. So you can see also the potentials of this region in terms of economic, not only on economic, but also social development progress. Among the sub-regional organization and integration initiatives in Asia and the Pacific, certainly the Eurasian Economic Union is among those with the highest level of ambition. A previous speaker already alluded that several successes already been gained. For example, allowing for the free movements of goods, services, capital, labor in the Union is a groundbreaking achievement. Reduction of intra-EU tariffs of over the past 25 years from 12% average to almost zero now is also another achievement. It has supported international agreements within the Union and taken a common approach to certain economic sectors. But the high level of ambition remains. There are bold plans to establish a Eurasian central bank and single currency. Trade agreements have been signed with several countries in Asia Pacific, already mentioned before, such as China, Vietnam, Iran. Several other MOUs also have been signed with governments of over 20 countries. So in other words, it's expanding. This cooperation is expanding in many fronts. Yet, for all these successes, there are scope for economic integration to be deepened further. So this is our homework for the future, not only within the Eurasian Economic Union, the countries in the Union, and in countries in North and Central Asia, but also with countries in the rest of Asia and certainly in Pacific. I think this morning, among others, Madame Lagarde also mentioned that one indicator, the intra-regional trade, for example, among countries in EU is 60%, but within the countries in this economic union is still quite low. As another comparison, the intra-regional trade, sub-regional trade within countries in Southeast Asia or ASEAN is about 24%. So just as a comparison. Despite the removal of Eurasian Economic Union tariffs, trade within the Union still remains smaller than with external partners. It only represented about 14% in 2017. And also, this trade is dominated by a few trade between few countries, not so much broad-based. On the scope or potential to increase the integration of the Eurasian Economic Union with the rest of Asia-Pacific region and some of the world's most dynamic markets. So as you understand, countries in the Asia-Pacific are, aside from large population, markets are very dynamic. Also growth of many countries in the region are, I believe, still among the highest in the world, and it's still consistent, despite all this, these challenges in the world economic order and the current trade situation. But the situation now, the cross trade between both region or sub-region, exports are still concentrated in low value-added commodities, and FDI, foreign direct investment, in the natural resources sector, mostly dominated by oil and gas sector or export, and it has not been changed much, over the past 2 decades. So this is a note. So if we want to develop further, we certainly have to diversify away. On the non-tariff trade costs, including additional logistic costs associated with many of the Central Asian countries being landlocked, continue to weigh on competitiveness. So it's a constraint. The North and Central Asia sub-region has the highest non-tariff trade costs of Asia Pacific, including this issue, this transport because of landlocked. Considering these challenges, may I suggest 3 priorities for us to collaborate further, both the intra-region, Asia Pacific, between Eurasian Economic Union and the rest of the region. So first, lowering cross-border trade and transportation costs requires the completion of transport, energy, information, and communication technology linkages. So in this area, I welcome further collaboration. Our Commission, SCAP, stands ready to collaborate further. Second, we must move integration beyond preferential tariffs and eliminate non-tariff barriers, restrictive rules of origin, and barriers to foreign direct investment. In this issue, also in this regard, we stand ready to collaborate further. Third, there is scope to reduce trade costs by simplifying and automating trade, transit, and investment procedures. For example, enabling the electronic exchange of trade information between North and Central Asia and trading partners could reduce trade costs by 25%. This is one of our simulation or calculation. And again, in this regard, our Commission, our Regional Commission UNSCAP, stand ready also to work more with all of you in areas such as trade facilitation, and also how to facilitate more investment in the region and across the sub-region. So these are, I believe, the opportunities that all of us can work closer together in the near future to realize the vision, our common vision of more regional economic integration and cooperation. Thank you very much, Tatiana.
Thank you very much, Armida, for your analysis, for concrete proposals about development of cooperation between the Eurasian Economic Union and the states of the Asian Pacific region. And I want to highlight that in the declaration which was adopted at the Supreme Economic Council in December last year, there is a section on cooperation of our union with our partners in the third countries, where we say and give the task to develop this idea to launch a big Eurasian partnership. And this format of big Eurasian partnership will enable us to solve the issues which you have proposed to solve. I want to thank for your analysis about the problems of sustainable development. And I want to say that the EU, the Eurasian Economic Union, gives much consideration to it, and we have become the first regional union which, on the platform of the political forum of high level in New York, presented the report about achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, and we are continuing actively to work over it. And now I want to give the floor to the representatives of business, as soon as our union is an economic one. And first of all, its achievements and drawbacks are visible to representatives of business. And I want to give the floor to Yaroslav Savol, who is from Sberbank, but he worked for long in Eurasian Bank of Development. And it's very interesting to listen to his vision about what goes in terms of integration processes, given that by the year 2025, the common financial market of our union must function, and we have to create the supranational regulator, which will be located here in Kazakhstan. Yaroslav, you are given the floor. Thank you very much. I want to beg your pardon for being late. The previous session was prolonged because the topic was trade war clashes, which is the negative impact of the global protectionism. And in fact, I think that we had a very interesting discussion, and one of the results of the discussion was that maybe we can rely and hope that the impulses of regional integration that we observe, in spite of what goes on in the global economy, can neutralize the negative things which happen in respect to trade war between China and US. And one of the issues which was discussed was to what extent regionalization can compensate these effects of global protectionism. And I think that the Eurasian Economic Union can become the platform which was enable at the regional level to compensate that negative thing. And of the challenges, maybe we can make the trends that we see in the global trade policy, we can translate them into opportunities, and the better integration develops under the framework of our union, the more our countries can translate this challenge into opportunities. 5 years, of course, is not a long period, but I think that we can see, in fact, that certain results have been gained, which are quite significant. We do have them, and first of all, that we saw palpable dividends and benefits from economic integration, including from the point of view of the economic development of our countries, macroeconomic parameters. We have seen that a number of countries were able to increase export to other countries of the Eurasian Union, but on top of it, we saw the palpable benefits from integration in the labor market. And of course, we must try to understand the whole arithmetics of Eurasian integration, but we saw within these 5 years quite considerable results at the level of the macroeconomy. But what is also very important, and Mr. Christenko already mentioned and highlighted this, is that one of the most important dividends that we see is the voice that we get in the international arena, in the international scene. And we can say that we are increasing our sovereignty in international economic relations, and it's an effective opportunity to form alliances in the space of the global economy. I think that it's very important. A very important document was issued by the Eurasian Economic Commission about the declaration about further development of integration processes, and they have a roadmap and priorities on Eurasian integration. And I think that focus on formation of different types of alliances is very important with different integration groups. And we indicate here ASEAN, SCO, Mercosur, and EU. We can say that the Eurasian Economic Union is positioned as a group or regional group which promotes open regionalism in the global economy. And I think that it's very important as of today under conditions when from regionalism, much depends in the global economy and how the economy can cope with the challenges in relation to protectionism. If we talk about if we follow the topic about integration and cooperation between businesses of our countries, here also a lot of important work has been done, and I want to state about very important steps undertaken by Eurasian Economic Commission to establish this cooperation with the business communities of our countries. And I think that a very important element here is the analytical information function, because about integration and its visible dividends. Not many people know all about it, and I think that it's a very important function. It must be promoted by Eurasian Economic Commission jointly with a partner such as the Eurasian Bank for Development, and further within the next several years. It can be done. As for the processes of economic and financial integration, I would say, and I would be limited by the next observation. I think that it's very important that the integration that we observe, on one side, it's an ambitious one, and the results which are achieved speak for themselves. But it's very important that the Eurasian Economic Union does not set up the objectives which cannot be implemented, which can undermine the flexible way forward in formation of the currency union in the short perspective and in other revolutionary areas. And this fast integration is very important. And we are focusing mostly on the sustainable integration rather on step-by-step movement in such directions as to use the use of national currencies for mutual settlements and other things. No doubt, I think that for our countries, integration in the financial sphere would be very important, and the time framework which is established to form the single financial market to integrate in the financial sphere, I think that it's a very important focus. But at the same time, it's very important to move towards the areas and to those goals at the cost of the areas which can be implemented, which can be realistically be implemented. If we talk about the use of national currencies, here we achieved quite important and positive results. And the last thing which I want to highlight is that, of course, there is a huge area for the work of the Eurasian Economic Union. These are economic alliances which will be formed by the Eurasian Economic Union within the next years. And I think that demonstration of the fact that this union draws attention, becomes a very influential player globally in the dozens of countries and economic blocs, express their wish to have negotiations to cooperate with the Eurasian Economic Union. And I think that here we can have very interesting new formats which are just being discussed, where our union can be an active participant. For instance, the format which was announced by China, BRICS Plus, which can assume cooperation between the regional integration groups, in which the countries of BRICS are playing their role. And if this scenario will be implemented for integration, it will have a big impulse to the integration processes. And one more format which within the last years is being discussed is an opportunity uh, to take the cooperation to the global level and to form at the G20, Regional 20, under the framework of which each country which will be a member of G20 will form this Regional 20, where regional integration groups are involved and where the members are the countries of the G20. And now, under conditions where the global economies depend on the regionalism, the aspect of interaction between the regional integration groups, where horizontal cooperation is lagging behind, where we need more interaction between the regional integration groups and with the World Trade Organization. I think that here we can have quite interesting innovations. And this initiative about the Regional 20 can be a step forward. And of course, cooperation of the Eurasian Economic Union with the global organizations, with international organizations such as the World Trade Organization. I think it's a very important aspect after joining of Belarus WTO. It's possible to have an alliance under the framework of the World Trade Organization to promote our joint interests at the global level. Thank you. Thank you very much, Yaroslav. You have mentioned the national currencies. It's a very important topic. And I wanted to announce to the audience that at the last meeting of the Collegium of the Eurasian Economic Commission, we approved the report on the use of national currencies. It's the result of the work which we did jointly with the experts from our states. We shall continue to talk about this topic. And in the declaration, President gives a task to extend these currencies and to integrate, and we are working over it actively. And also in the declaration, there is a very important topic. It's about approximation of the union to our citizens. So of course, we are guided by the fact that our union is of economic, but the content of it is being changing in such spheres as education, science, healthcare, sports, tourism are also very important elements where we can expand our economic cooperation. And when we talk about the economic cooperation in the sphere of education, we set up the tasks while forming the common labor market. We can create opportunity to work in any point of Eurasian Economic Union. It's very important for us that our citizens will have necessary qualifications, necessary level of education to be in demand. And now I want to give the floor to Robert Nelchurazov, General Director of the Union Agency of Development of Professional Unions in Working HR, young professionals, about development of HR. Good day. Today, when the previous speakers talked and when Viktor Borishis talked about 20 years of our history, I looked back in the past, and I was scared to remember that I was still a school child. But now let's look at the pillars on which we stand. One indicator is specific to us, the rating doing business. Look at the dynamics which is demonstrated by the Republic of Kazakhstan, Belarus, Russian Federation. See, went fastly. What happened? What is the phenomenon? The phenomenon is in that one part of their system of governance, measurement of economic activity, and business climate, they delegated to the other organization. It happened this way, and now cannot have a direct impact on this indicator. Now let's talk about people. Yeah. And let's try to apply this example. Today at the plenary session, Nur-Sultan said one very important thing, which is critically important, that now not the number of the population can have an impact on GDP, but labor productivity. And he said about the figure of 2%. Under the framework of preparation, and maybe some people don't know, but using this opportunity, I want to advertise myself. In the Russian Federation this year, we carry out the World Championship, World Skills. They establish the norms for production for certain professions. Under the framework of it, we carry out a survey, big survey with Rosatom, based on the database of OECD. In terms of how much people lose because they don't have the appropriate qualification. If in Western countries it will be 4% to GDP, for the countries of the post-Soviet space, for the countries which are based on the planned economy, it will be from 6 to and above percentage. I looked only at Russia and Kazakhstan figures. In Kazakhstan, 10 billion dollars GDP, in Russia 90 billion. What does it speak of? It means that the investments and movements in this area help us to increase the critical growth. So, what is integration possible? The most simple thing, when we do it at the national level, everybody tries to measure themselves. We get into a trap traditional when we set up an objective. You set up an objective to run, for instance, so many meters, and you will adjust something. But in doing business, if you make other people to measure and to evaluate, you get quite a different effect. And we use such measurements for the champions of world skills. In the Russian Federation, we were everywhere ranking the last ones. But we took 3 professions which characterize the profession of the cook, of welder, engineer, designer. I say we took industry 3.0, the engineer designer, which creates the high value added factor. And it turned out that we were at the same very low places with Kazakhstan, but Russia made a step forward because we got the independent benchmark to carry out such Tunis. We had to increase our productivity by these indicators. We are, by 2, we are ranking #1, and by 1, #4. Kazakhstan and Belarus and Kazakhstan were behind. But this is a simple integration. It means that we should transfer the skills that we have. I know that you supervise the Ministry of Finance. Just imagine how much of money you lose because you don't have the production. Why not to carry out world skills? It's the right moment. There are some moments that in spite of the efforts which have been done by the tie-downs on liberalization of labor market, we don't have a single space where human beings can find a vacancy with beyond the national jurisdiction. And this respects the idea of electronic labor exchange, integration of economic and labor spaces seems to be very attractive. And the last thing which I want to say is that unfortunately we have so many challenges in terms of preparation of the skilled people because we don't have the skills, but it's related maybe to the changes that happen. And today we criticize the system of education, which is a bottleneck, and new values of young people. They are focused not on profit, but on increasing free time. And we are talking about involvement of the categories of the citizens. So for post-Soviet countries, the problem of involving women is not a matter, but for other countries, it's a problem area. But if we look at this issue widely, we talk about involvement of disabled people, of people who live in rural areas. We calculate that these challenges, they are around 7. They are characterized by the fact that they have a serious impact on the economy in billions and trillions, if you're talking rubles. We don't have the system-based measurement systems. We know something about challenges, but we don't know how to measure it. How a person who lives in Nur-Sultan cannot go to Sverdlovsky, Ekaterinburg to work. How can we measure it in terms of mass? What is the efficiency of transactions in the labor exchange? We don't know anything about it. We don't have any instruments. So when we talked, Tatiana, about the strategies and strategies which Eurasian Union faces, I think that the space which is being formed as of today and which has been developed in terms of the macro-regional unions, they can work as a locomotive to create the system of measurement in terms about the impact of people on the economies and to collect the instruments which are being developed in the country. Thank you for your attention. Let me respond. WorldSkills is a very good championship. We are studying this issue and we plan to participate in the next tournament in the year 2025 because it's a chance to increase the quality of the specialties. It's very important and we shall participate. The Russian Federation has experiences. We can prompt you how to become winners with our greatest pleasure. As a commission, we also coordinate our work with WorldSkills. We are thinking about new areas for cooperation. We look at the skilled professionals development for our common labor market. Let me add one more topic about our growth in doing business. We analyzed what happens that we all improved in doing business and practically we are very close to each other. On one hand, really, our supranational legislation, which we adopted, we initially agreed that we shall try not to take the average statistical and not legislation of a big country, but the best international practices. We managed to do it. On the other hand, our legislations, which are in the sphere of national competences, they started to improve. Why? Because for the first time we use the principle of competition of jurisdictions and our governments compete for business. In the past, we said that everybody strives to take off with the administrative barriers, but when the governments were not in the competitive environment, this process was slow. But now when business says, if you don't eliminate this administrative national barrier, I shall move to the jurisdiction of Kazakhstan or Armenia when they don't have these barriers, and it is a big signal for our national governments. It's a very important moment. Now I want to give the floor to the representatives of EU business. We are talking about active cooperation with Asian Pacific region, which goes on quite well, but cooperation with EU by many objective reasons, it goes very slowly, passively. If we even practically, we don't have any cooperation. Also, the first initiative of the Eurasian Economic Union already in the year 2015, and officially Viktor Borisovich sent an official letter to the chairperson of the Eurasian Commission to start a dialogue. Then Nur-Sultan proposed to have a big international conference to discuss the problems of the Eurasian Economic Union and EU. And only last year, at the end of the year, we were able to hold the first event in Brussels. And when we talk about what we are losing from the lack of the large-scale dialogue between the two unions, I always name the simple figure. Within the last 5 years, volumes of mutual trade between EU and the Eurasian Economic Union reduced for $300 billion. Within 5 years, we lost $300 billion. Anyway, European business is actively participating in all processes in establishing establishing the dialogue, and we are grateful to it. And maybe European business sees advantages of Eurasian integration, and on the basis of EU experiences, where to move to. That's why I want to give the floor first to Frank Shaw, General Director of the Association of European Business. Спасибо, господин министр Воловая.
Discussion about 25 years of integration in the Eurasian space. As a European citizen, certainly I understand that first, integrating is legitimate between different states in the region. Second, it makes sense because if you look at the history of the European Union, then certainly, even if there is a lot of problems, in the end, it has been a successful integration project, the most successful one up to date, and I know that you have been closely following the development of the European Union, also when establishing the Eurasian Economic Union. European companies are clearly in favor of this integration process, and they already benefit working on the territory of the Eurasian Economic Union from the integration process when we talk about, for example, customs procedures falling apart between the different countries. We, as the Association of European Businesses, have been cooperating with the Commission of the Customs Union before, then with the Eurasian Economic Commission very intensively. And certainly, if we look into the topics which we are dealing with on a daily basis, I don't know, in this week already I had a number of letters which gave us a clarification of the Eurasian Economic Commission on different issues. We were invited to discussion in working groups in the Eurasian Economic Commission. So the interaction between us as an Association of European Businesses, the main representation of foreign investors, and the Eurasian Economic Commission is very intense, and I have the impression that it's growing in its significance. Important areas of cooperation are, for example, the intellectual property rights. If you want to develop an industrial base or broader industrial base in the Eurasian Economic Union, as it has been in the European Union, the, let's say, significance of intellectual property rights is very important. Second point, we're very actively communicating with the respective minister and his team on customs procedures. We have been participating in the discussion on the new customs code, which came into force at the beginning of last year. We have been helping, assisting in establishing a communication, a dialogue between national customs authorities inside the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union Minister for Customs. And I think this is something which is helpful also in the further process of bringing the communication between the Eurasian Economic Commission and the European Commission to a new level. Technical regulations is very important for us, certainly, as representing foreign businesses in the Eurasian Economic Union. It is also important to align technical regulation between the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union. This is one of the main discussions that we are having with the European Commission at the moment. We have been showing them in the past few weeks, for example, what are the decisions of the Eurasian Economic Commission and the Customs Commissions before, which have relevance for the activities of European companies working here in the Eurasian space and for companies trading between the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union. And we think that this is one of the main factors which could lead to a change, say, on the side of the European authorities with regards to cooperating and communicating with the Eurasian Economic Commission. Another point is we all, I think, have a challenge which is linked to the development of China. And we all see that China is very active in its initiative, which is supposed, let's say, to facilitate trade for China with the rest of the world, especially on the Eurasian continent. The European Commission has published a strategy on connectivity between Europe and Asia, which is dealing with a number of problems, be it transport, be it energy, be it the digital transformation of the continent and the communication between the different players on the continent. And this is one major topic where also certainly the Eurasian Economic Union and Russia and Kazakhstan and the other participants can play a role in order, let's say, to give a constructive input into the cooperation between the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union. Finally, I want to say that European companies, not only the ones who are working here in Russia, but if I look into the discussion into the national business associations of the European Union, are very much in favor of having a space between Lisbon and Vladivostok where trade can take place, where investments can take place without any barriers. Therefore, we are working very intensively with the European institutions with regards to taking up an official and political dialogue between the European Commission and the Eurasian Economic Commission. And we're doing this very intensively. We have been discussing this already over a number of times, and we're certainly also going to continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Франк. Мы, к сожалению,
Thank you very much, Frank. The time has elapsed. We are requested to finalize.
Кристиану Хартону, исполнительному директору российско-германской.
I will give the floor to Christian. Christian, unfortunately, we don't have much time, just 5 minutes.
Татьяна Дмитриева, за того, что я могу здесь выступать, я быстро хожу по маленькой презентации.
As soon as I'm limited of time, I will make a small presentation. The industry chamber has 9,000 staff, 3 million of the members of companies included. It's about global network of German foreign trade chambers. We act in different countries. We know about certificates of origin of the product, that if we need maybe conclusions about the projects, we also do it. We do and are engaged with professional training. Every year we carry out around 450,000 examinations in companies. 1/3 of our national GDP goes to export. It's 4 billion euros per 1 working day. That is why it's very interesting for us to know what goes on abroad, and that is why it's in the interest of our country to develop such chambers. We have already such chambers in Moscow, where 900 people work. We have the Russian and German members who work in Moscow. We work in close cooperation jointly with our members. We have 20 committees which sit once a month, and they're managed by representatives of our companies. That's why we know for sure the views of our members, and we make regular interviews. And the last interview was done at the end of the year 2017, and we saw that our members of the companies are interested in simplification of the customs clearance processes. They want to cover a bigger market. They want to improve the situation with logistics. They are talking about free flow in the labor market. There are topics where each enterprise is concerned about. That's why we ask them to what extent it's important for the companies. All companies said that in the year 2017 they are interested to be here, and they said that Eurasian Economic Union is very supportive. The next interview about to what extent it was implemented. 75% of people said yes, it was implemented. It's very important from the point of view of marketing because Eurasian Economic Union has a very positive image in the German economy. And there was one item referring to the financial sphere, which we can see on the right side of our slide, which was not quite positive. As soon as our German business community sees certain benefits with cooperation with the Eurasian Economic Union, they say yes, for our EU members, there is a big benefit from this cooperation, and there are some items which have been announced, already described, that within the last years we have several barriers, and we have a lot of new norms which Eurasian Economic Union can simplify, but they must be solved quickly because there is a big flow of information. That is why we need to strengthen your opportunities, which is the wish of our business community. What can we do in this situation? Now we are not dealing with the politics. We can deal with what Mr. Schaaf has already said. It is the topic on technical regulation to help with the norms, to work jointly with this group, to advise, to have mutual understanding about these norms and to see what we can adapt or how we can harmonize, in respect to our norms. We, as a foreign chamber, created a new position in our chamber. This is Mr. Rasmus, who is responsible for it. We invite all stakeholders to carry out here or to speed up the process of harmonization. The idea that we should cover the space from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Here, we, as a chamber, joined this initiative, which was proposed by Mr. Schneider, our member, and every year we see additional enterprises which also join this MOU. Now we have 53 companies which have signed this MOU. The goal of it, harmonization in the sphere of technical regulation, where we carry out conferences. We want to remove administrative barriers and to establish a visa-free regime, because in Kazakhstan it's possible to do it. This is a goal which can be achieved. And in fact, we think that step by step we can move forward. It's possible right now, and it can be a big achievement. In this respect, as a chamber, we want to carry out a big conference, and we want to invite our colleagues. One page is missing here. We want to hold this conference on the 22nd of October here to get all specialists from Eurasian Economic Union, from Germany, EU, to discuss the topic on norms and to talk about the topic of agro-industrial complex. And these are items which we are concerned with, and we think as a German economy, we can be supportive to you. Thank you very much for the given floor. Thank you very much, Christian, for your positive assessment for efforts which you and Frank proposed to build up the dialogue with EU. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, but I want to say that here on our tables, we have quite a large number of information materials. Maybe you can find answers to many of your questions. But now I want to thank everybody, participants of our discussion. Thank you very much for this very interesting session.